What's up?
Sploosh.
Hey Dragonfly Swarm, so Genshin Impact's new 5-star Hydro Catalyst wielder Sango no Miya Kokomi, or just Kokomi, has been released unto the crazed Mermaid simps, and there's a lot to talk about with Queen Mermaid Lady, but let me start with a brief overview of her kit. So, Kokomi is primarily a healer, but her kit also comes with some pretty unique attributes that allow her to pull off a Hydro application roll really well as, despite her inability to crit, for most people, she has a decent and very consistent damage output when using her burst and her elemental skill together. Kokomi can perform 3 consecutive normal attacks as well as a charged attack that has a fucking massive Aeolia, I'm not gonna lie. Kokomi's elemental skill summons a Bakekurage jellyfish looking thing that has decent damage output, really nice Hydro application, and absolutely absurd healing output for nearby active characters. Given a few kit passives, it pairs really nicely with her elemental burst, which puts Kokomi in a steroid state for a few seconds, increasing the damage and healing from her entire kit based on her max HP. Also, her normal and charged attacks now heal all party members, even the ones not on the field. Essentially, given the right builds, Kokomi is easily one of, if not the most powerful healer in the game. Now, keep in mind, she may be the strongest healer in the game, but her kit sacrifices a lot of damage output and a bit of utility to do so. And in that regard, I feel like I need to mention that Kokomi is definitely one of the weaker 5-stars miHoYo has released, given her mostly subpar damage output and the weird complications of her trying to be a DPS while sacrificing nearly all of her damage for heals. Her kit is definitely weird, but she's still got potential, and I am here to unlock it. In terms of artifacts, it's kind of funny because there are 3 main sets that you can mix and match together however you want to get strong but subtly different versions of Kokomi when playing her. Tenacity of the Millilith, Heart of Depth, and Maiden's Beloved. And as long as you're not trying to build crit stats, there's really no designated best option as to which combination of these sets you use. For example, if you run a 2-piece Tenacity and 2-piece Maidens, you're getting a huge boost to your HP and healing output, which, given her scaling, will turn Kokomi into a tank that outputs insane healing, especially from her Bakekurage. If you run a 2-piece Tenacity, 2-piece Heart of Depths, there's a pretty decent increase in her damage output, and since you're still boosting her HP, you're not just getting extra Hydro and ability damage, you're also still increasing her overall healing output, just slightly less than you would with Maidens. Personally though, I think her strongest set is a 2-piece Maiden, 2-piece Tenacity, as it allows her to focus a huge healing output while simultaneously building some pretty decent damage output, which is especially apparent when she runs on an Electro Charge team, but I'll get into that later. You can run the 4-piece of any of these 3 sets, but the only one I'd really recommend is a 4-piece Tenacity, because it's the only set that'll keep her well-rounded and scale all of her utility, rather than restricting her to be, say, a subpar damage dealer with Heart of Depths, or an insane healer that cannot do anything else with 4-piece Maiden. The Tenacity set focuses her HP scaling, which buffs her entire kit, and also gives a nice team attack boost anytime her Kurage hits an opponent. So if you're hellbent on a 4-piece and want the best performance possible out of Kokomi, run the 4-piece Tenacity set. Now, what kind of weapon do you equip a mermaid princess with? The answer? Simple. Any weapon with an HP stat. I'm serious, it's extremely important to build HP on Kokomi because her entire kit heavily scales off of her max HP, and so if you're running a Catalyst with an HP stat, it's a really nice boost to all of her utility. And the funny thing with that is, it leaves you with 3 options, the first of which being the Everlasting Moonglow, which is unsurprisingly her best in slot given that it's her weapon banner 5-star. This weapon is an amazing but extremely niche weapon as it only really works well on Kokomi and maybe Barbara, but we don't talk about Barbara. The weapon gives a huge HP bonus as well as a huge base attack and an attack boost based on your total HP. It also gives a healing bonus and provides built-in energy recharge. We get it, it's a cool weapon. But the more realistic weapon option, and objectively the most free-to-play friendly, is the prototype Amber, a craftable 4-star catalyst that provides a large HP bonus and a cool passive that provides energy recharge and HP regen to all party members anytime the wielder uses their burst. This weapon fits Kokomi really well and is the option that the vast majority of Kokomi users will probably end up using, given its accessibility and surprisingly large amount of power and utility, all of which synergizes as well with Kokomi's playstyles. The third and final main option is the Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers, a 3-star catalyst that you really don't need considering prototype Amber is craftable, but if you're gonna use this anyway, it's nice to know that the weapon does have an HP stat, and anytime you switch from the character using this weapon, whoever you switch to will get a pretty hefty attack boost for 10 seconds, which is actually a nice passive for a 3-star. I personally stuck with the prototype Amber for the entirety of my time playing Kokomi just because it performs extremely well and allows her to get a lot more out of her kit than most other catalysts would. But that leaves us with probably the weirdest part about Kokomi, team comps. Kokomi's issue is that she isn't the best on any teams, but she fits into a lot of them really nicely as a substitute for other Hydro characters or healers. And there are 3 most notable teams that she fits on really well, the first and most obvious of which being an Ayaka/Ganyu freeze comp. Kokomi has quite a bit of Hydro application if you're tossing her Kurage and frequently charged attacking, so she fits nicely onto freeze comps and allows you to get away with not having a shielder given her absolutely ridiculous and consistent healing. So you can swap Diona out for someone like Rosaria who can massively increase your overall damage output on the team. With this team, I'd recommend the 4-piece Tenacity, as Ganyu and Ayaka would both heavily benefit from its 4-piece attack boost whenever Kokomi's skill is on the field, and it also rounds out her HP bonus very nicely in a team that kind of requires her to be a tank. The next team comp is a really interesting one, and actually the one that I settled for given I'm not on my account, so the teams I was able to test were a little restricted, but I introduced the Shocky Mermaid comp. Kokomi fits surprisingly well in electro-charged comps where you use characters like Raiden, Beto, or Fischl to passively give Kokomi electro attacks while she's using her burst. This will quickly, and I mean quickly, spread the AoE electro charge status to just about any enemy in the room, and it's probably one of, if not the best team comps to bring to floor 11 of the current Spiral Abyss. You can use any combination of Raiden, Beto, Fischl, and even Lisa to get the electro resonance passive, which will allow you to recharge energy extremely fast, making it a very fast-paced team. As for your 4th character, you can use just about any character you want, but I'd recommend using an Anemo enabler such as Sucrose or Kazuha. As for the final team comp, and arguably the strongest overall, the National Team, featuring Mermaid Lady. There are a lot of variants of the National Team that work, but the one I used was Kokomi, Xiangling, Bennett, and Kazuha. You can replace Kazuha for Sucrose, by the way. This team works really well with Kokomi as she can make good use of Vaporize as well as having a constant presence on the field with either her burst or her Kurage skill, and as fast-paced as this team is, Kokomi keeps up with it quite well and is able to constantly apply the Hydro needed to make the team's DPS huge. With this team comp, I'd recommend running 2-piece Tenacity and 2-piece Heart of Depths, as Bennett already covers a large part of the team's healing, so with Kokomi, you can rather focus on her overall damage output while still getting some healing bonus out of it. As for Constellations, Kokomi's are quite bad, I'm not gonna lie. The majority of her Constellations try forcing her to deal more raw damage, which isn't usually a bad thing, but in Kokomi's case, her damage scales completely linearly because she doesn't crit, so she can't make insane use of these Constellations as a main DPS, and I unfortunately cannot recommend pulling for Constellations on Kokomi, taking into account how expensive they can be. If you want a main DPS Kokomi or are just a huge fan like Aeolia, the owner of this Kokomi, go for the cons, but for the average player, I'd say the only worthwhile cons are her level increase cons and her C2, which is just massively increasing her healing on low health enemies, but even then, that would require you to pull her at least 3 times, which is extremely expensive and extremely rare. So, although Kokomi is among the weakest 5 stars to be released in Genshin, she still has a solid spot in the game, and while I'm open to seeing tweaks and buffs, she has good impact where she is. With the highest healing output in the game, decent DPS, and insane Hydro application, I present... Mermaid Lady!